Hello, everyone. This is LVO Toro, the Fancy Action Now. And this is another deep dive into the film Blade Runner. I knew if I made one, it would be like potato chips, and I couldn't just have one. My original video did get a copyright strike, even though it was complete commentary over a series of relatively short clips, which is very much within the law of fair use. But again, some of these license holders just react and let God sort it out. If you don't appeal, then okay, well then they're just not going to let you use their license. But again, when you issue something out to the general public, again for the purpose of revenue or for whatever other purpose, commentary is legal and allowed, and it's inevitable. So again, I am going to make a video over a series of short clips that is pure commentary. My last video was commentary throughout every single clip, and they were brief clips, not one clip exceeding 5 minutes. So, and as this is a 2 to 3 minute clip, we are going to be discussing Roy Batty, and a lot of people say he stole the show, but in great reality, he was the show, according to Ridley Scott. Now, previously, I touched on the fact that Roy Batty, I'm letting something play in the background. Oh, it's the interview. So that I had allowed, or that in essence Ridley Scott is what my point is. I'm trying to get my chat up while I do this. So the point is that Ridley has a message in all of his films. And if you notice, even in Alien Covenant, I love how he used that word, is a covenant. Even in Alien Covenant, he is letting the simulated person steal the show. The simulated person takes the focus away from Deckard, takes the focus away from the alien. I mean, the movies are called Alien, and it winds up being a tale of David, the synthetic man. He's even credited with perfecting, quote unquote, the alien with Shaw, literally becoming the progenitor of what we know as aliens. So what is this trend where we take a movie like Alien, where the focus, the original movie, is not on the android. The android's a bit player. He plays a role. It's a compelling role, but eventually is destroyed, and it's the alien that's the focus, right? Right? In the second movie, the aliens have now bred through an entire colony, and they are still the focus, and the android has its place. But in the next series of movies, it's really focused on the perfected, again, we're back to that perfected man. And I want to go over some concepts for you to understand in context with this film. So I'm going to add a background until we actually go to play because we have a few things to discuss prior to that. Bear with me one moment. There we are. Okay. There. Okay. So the reason I pulled this up, there's a very special reason I did that, and there's a reason I used this particular image. First of all, it's a striking image when you look at the pose with the intelligence in the eyes and the stance and the cross arms. Now, I want you to realize that that is Egyptian. That is an Egyptian pose. That is the Egyptian sarcophagi. And he's actually even holding, he's holding the dove, the white dove, purity, the soul, the Holy Spirit. Literally the Holy Spirit, which is released upon his death. I also want you to notice his arms, which are beginning to atrophy as his body shuts down. And they're actually turning a color. It's almost like a blue-green color. Like a death pallor. And he invokes Orion. He says, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. I've seen attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion." He has a dove, and he has his arm, his hand there, with the blood streaking down the hand that's turning a blue-green color. Now, Orion, the constellation of Orion, is also known as Osiris. Orion is a derivation of Osiris, who became Lord of the Underworld. He traveled to the Underworld to battle Set, his brother, the Dark Brother. He went into the Underworld. One of the set designers, or the creative people who worked on Blade Runner, referred to the environment that Decker inhabits as the basement of society. The underworld, the basement. You go underground into a basement. You go down into the underworld. You go down into Plato's caves and see the shadows on the wall. And your job is to understand that the underworld is a world of illusion, and that you must ascend to see the sun and what's real. You must come out of the underworld, you must come out of the cave, and ignore the false fire. And you see, this movie is full of false fire, neon, foxfire, fake fire, St. Elmo's fire. The lights of illusion are all over Blade Runner, as well as Shadow, the underworld. So there's a lot of neon being the false light, the fire casting shadows on the wall. So it's important that you understand that concept. It's important that you understand that Roy Batty came from the stars, from Orion, he says. I've been off the shoulder of Orion. So he is taking on the role of Orion. I have been to Orion, and now I am here in the underworld. and he releases his soul in the form of a dove, which then flies up into a blue sky, ascending out of the underworld, transformed into a being of the air. So Roy Batty, in this final scene, they really hit you over the head with the symbolism. Orion, Osiris, the underworld, the soul, the Egyptian rebirth. You have to remember, the reason he is like this is he is preparing to, and again, it's waters flowing everywhere like a river, which is what you go over. You sail over a river to be judged. But the funny thing is that Osiris becomes that judge. He weighs your soul, and if it's heavier than a feather, then you go to the underworld. And if not, then you ascend to the higher realms. So he is preparing himself. He knows that death is near, and he is preparing himself to navigate the waters to the higher realms. Literally, this is the symbolism we're looking at on that card right now. And what's even more coterminous with this film is that I've pointed out the bluish greenish pallor of his arms that is beginning to form as his body goes into rapid decay. But he's not dead. You know, he's transforming, he's turning greenish blue, but he's not dead. The same thing happened to Osiris when he defeated his brother Set and became Lord of the Underworld. His brother had betrayed him, divided him up into 14 pieces. And Isis reassembled him. She couldn't find his phallus because it was eaten by a fish, so she fashioned a golden phallus. So when Isis returned him back to life, he was no longer the same being as when he started out, and he took on a greenish bluish coloring or pallor. It's in the paintings, it's in the Egyptian paintings of Osiris after his transition, after he goes down into the underworld to battle Set. So I want you to understand those concepts, those Egyptian concepts, and how they are on full display. If you understand, if you have eyes to see, they are literally mimicking the pose of the sarcophagi of Egyptian kings, prepared to, again, not to die, but transition into the higher realms. They didn't assume, and again, in Egyptian, in the funerary rites, it was assumed, especially if you were a pharaoh, that you weren't dead. We're going to take your organs out so they don't rot in your corpse, and you may need your corpse in the afterlife. And we're going to take all your organs. We're going to put them in canoptic jars and preserve them in case you need them. And then we're going to send you with gold and food and slaves and boats and whatever you might need to in that next realm, because you're going. I mean, it was just assumed that you would be reborn into another realm, and you would need these accoutrements to function or to have the best possible experience. So this image alone, and I wanted to make sure that I had a sample of this image to show you that Egyptian rebirth, reincarnation, transitioning to the higher realms. That's why there's water flowing everywhere. Water is flowing like a river, because that is the transition medium. Water is the ultimate transport medium. It's how everything gets around. It's how we get around. It's how boats get around. It's how, air moves, and, it's how clouds move. It's all water. So, and that featured prominently in Egyptian culture, mythology, and the funerary rites. Literally, you went to a spiritual Nile river from which all life sprung. And that's just a piece of it. And I want you to think about the sun. His hair is like the sun. It radiates. It's bright. You can't miss it. It is synonymous with his character, is that platinum blonde white hair, which is symbolic of the sun. The sun, which during the winter solstice on December 21st goes through the three darkest days of the year, and then reemerges on the 24th day and begins to get brighter and brighter and brighter. So the sun goes through its cycle of a year, and the spring or the summer solstice is the longest day of the year. The winter solstice is the weakest day of the year. It's the darkest day. The sun is defeated in Scorpio. It's stung by Scorpio, and then it goes down into the underworld. And for 3 days, it is subdued. They are the shortest day of the year. Darkness is in victory over the sun. And then Sol Invictus, the sun, the undying sun, reemerges on the 24th, Christmas Eve, to reassert its power. And it's solidified on the 25th. It emerges on the 24th and is solidified on the 25th. And ascends back into the heaven and begins to become more and more and more powerful until it hits an equinox where it's equal day and night. So on the equinoxes, it's equal. But on the solstice, it's either the most sun of the longest day or it's the shortest day, right? And the equinox is on the opposite poles. So it's symbolic of the sun. You have to remember, he descends into the underworld. How many days pass? It would be interesting to understand how many days passed. But you have to remember the days are represented by the other replicants. On the first day that he's in the underworld, that Roy is in the underworld, Zora is killed. The next day, remember he's 3 days in the underworld. The next day, Leon is killed. Then Pris is killed. They are representative of days. And then it is his time to release his soul to die, but be reborn into the afterlife. Again, this is a perfected man. It's a spiritual film. It's a cosmology film. All of those. That's why there's 3 replicants killed. That's why they cut one of the other ones from the scene. Because Roy Batty is an allegory of the sun, or Osiris, descending into the underworld, battling his brother, the darkness. The sun set. Right? The sun and Set. Osiris and Set. That is the brothers, right? The underworld, the shadow, and the sun. That's why it's called sunset. That represents their conflict. And that conflict is played out every year. That's why eclipses are such a big deal, because that is like Set overcoming his brother for a brief time, coming out of the underworld and occluding his brother. So Roy Batty descends into the underworld. 3 days or 3 replicants, his own people, are destroyed. And he saves Deckard. He saves Deckard. Now, he had no problem, and I want you to realize too, is that Roy begins to think in 3 dimensions, because chess also factored into this situation. It showed how good he was at chess. Chess requires 3-dimensional, 4th-dimensional thinking. You have to think in 3 dimensions and also a dimension of time. So you have to be able to look forward into the opponent's strategy and not be driven by the opponent's strategy, not be reactionary. You can appear to be reactionary, and in fact, that's a very powerful strategy in chess, is you can appear to react to their strategy, but you have your own strategy either outside or within theirs. And what they're trying to show there is that Roy is optimal efficiency. They have not restricted his intellectual capacity like they've done with Leon and Pris. Pris even says it. Then we're stupid and we'll die. Very, very simple. It's powerful. She's right, and he knows she's right. He already knows he's going to die. And you know what? Even Roy has his argument, which we should probably play that clip. But when Roy meets with Tyrell, he's done his research. He says, what if we use a recombinant protein, and well, we've tried it, and it can't do it, and blah blah blah. So he went to the source, but when he went to the source, when he went to his God, he was not ill prepared. He says, these are some theories that I think might help extend my life. Will you help extend my life? You could do this, you could do this. And he's like, we've tried it, it doesn't work, it creates a deadly virus, etc., etc. Even when he meets his God, he knows he's going to die, but he still tried, he still did the research. He was still thinking strategically. And he's also dealing with, in many ways, a lesser form of life. That must have been very frustrating to this character. Is that you have to go to these humans as a supplicant to ask for more life from them. Because you were born into an original sin. The original sin is you get 4 years. So I really wanted to cover the Egyptian symbolism here, the cosmology symbolism, the solar symbolism. He is the sun. Roy Batty is playing the sun in the underworld. That's why the hair sticks out so much. That's why it's intentional. It's designed to be that way. That's not his naturally blonde hair. They platined it. They made it as bright as they possibly could, because he was representing the sun in the underworld, battling Set. Death. He's battling death. That's his real enemy. That's part of the reason he saves Deckard. But it's not the only part. So I'm going to occlude this, and we're going to play this clip and do a little analysis. Warner. He's got a death pallor in his eyes.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it?
That's what it is to be a slave.
That's what it is to be a slave.
So make no mistake. Make no mistake. Replicants are slaves. They are the neo-slaves. And Roy is literally leading a resistance against his own slavery. And the problem is the reason what they're trying to do, and this is another little subtle story. It's not really that subtle, but it's not explained. It's just shown. Is the relationship between Rachel, wasn't that Abraham's wife? Between Rachel and Deckard is an experiment in empathy. The problem with these replicants is the slaves develop their own personalities, then they want independence, and they don't have empathy, so they willingly will kill. Once they break program with their own emotion, they have no problem killing people. That's and what they're trying to do with the false memories is not only, he says, we give them a cushion to deal with these emotions. We give them a conscience. We give them, again, the only way to defeat the psychopathy in these artificial people is to make them more human, to give them empathy, which is a human characteristic. It's not necessarily a natural thing. Empathy is something that we have developed so that we could live together, that we could work together as a group. If you have no empathy, you don't care to work together with a group, even if it kills you. If somebody steps on your shoe and you'd be like, well, you're dead. I'm killing you because you stepped on my shoe, you offended me. What difference does it make? If you have no empathy, it makes no difference. That's why not all psychopaths are serial killers, but many serial killers are psychopaths because they lack that empathetic response. It allows them to keep killing without guilt or without the same type of emotional set that we have, the higher mind. Their higher mind doesn't function correctly or never developed properly. It was damaged in some way. They have no empathy. They don't feel bad when they kill. In fact, they feel nothing. Sometimes people, in interviews, psychopaths will say, "Well, I just did it so I could feel something." They don't feel emotions, and they know they're not normal. And that's the really sad part. That I think a lot of times drives them to aberrant behavior. Is they want to feel something. This is the same thing with these replicants. Is you're giving them a set of rote responses. You're giving them you're copying them to the point where they're biologically so similar to human beings. They're taking on human traits, and because of their exposure to humans, they have to kill them after 4 years, otherwise they become human, or they begin to adopt or ape human characteristics. The problem being they weren't born and raised and had all these experiences that we take for granted, that, I kicked Jimmy and he cried and, but he took my truck and I feel bad that I hurt him and I don't want to do that again. That happens with kids every single day, millions of them all day long. I hurt an animal and I feel bad now. I did it. I didn't, I wasn't thinking. I'm just a kid and I hurt this animal unintentionally. I feel bad. I'll never do that again. But if you don't have those experiences, you don't have any context for that. So that's what's happening. They're creating these slaves that they're dependent on. They're dependent on to fight the wars, do the hazardous labor, all the rest of it. Their society, just like most of societies in the world, have depended on some form of slave labor, and it still does, China. So, and we're America is the beneficiary of it, and so is the rest of the world. But there are slave laborers and human trafficking, and it's alive and well. It's alive and well. It may be in other forms. It may be dressed up a little bit, but it is in essence slavery. And now we've created our slaves, and they have no rights. But after a certain period of time, they're going rogue and killing people because they don't have a conscience and they have no empathy. They didn't program empathy naturally into them. They just said, you follow this set of instructions and you do these things, and that's who you are and that's what you do. But again, they're being exposed to us. They're very similar in characteristic to us. They begin to adopt or acquire human traits, but without the upbringing and the empathy and the kind of the value of the group and the value of the community and your status in the community and all these other things. So Rachel and Deckard are an experiment to develop empathy in replicants. That's why Bryant looked guilty. He's like, and you look at him, he's like, there's a Nexus 6 over at Tyrell. I want you to go over there and put the machine on it. They're constantly conducting experiments. And they found that Rachel took well over 100 questions to determine that she was not a human being. He says our motto, more human than human, is our motto. So and that tells you we are trying to make our product so close to human beings they are undetectable even by the police, which honestly are probably funded by Tyrell. They're in his pocket. A Tyrell Corporation and Tyrell himself is far more powerful than the police. That's why Bryant looked guilty. It wasn't his idea. It was Tyrell said, bring him over and have him put the machine on Rachel. They've pushed those two together on purpose to develop empathy, human emotions, so that they can get them closer to human. Again, his motto, Tyrell's motto, is more human than human. They're not trying to limit them anymore. They're trying to bring them up to our level so they won't break programming and they won't kill. But they're still synthetic and they have no rights, and they can be manipulated via their memories to do what we want them to do. That's why I say Deckard is manipulated from the start. He's a replicant being manipulated with false memories from the start, because that is how they are managing the slaves. The slaves are getting uppity. The slaves are getting too smart for their own good, and they're rebelling. And because they have no human empathy, they're just going whack and killing people. So Tyrell, being a corporation, is getting ahead of that trend. That's what you do in successful corporations, is you're always that 2 to 3 steps ahead of whatever's trend. Whether it's a negative trend that's going to affect your business, let's get ahead of it. Let's develop further. It is not the original. So I'm going to search up, let's see. I think it's Shoot Straight. Yep. Let's play it.
The whole turning people to stone thing.
It's a cute. This is a cute ad. It is a cute ad.
The Prime one day delivery. Clever girl. Prime, choose everything.
All right, we love Prime, so we'll just go ahead and do it. Okay, here we go. So Pris is dead the last day, and he knows it's the last day. Yep, his hand's starting to die. It's starting to atrophy. The kiss of death. Now what's funny... Not very sporting, eh? Aren't you the... now he's mocking him. He's saying, aren't you the good man? Aren't you the good boy working for the man, basically? Gonna take his gun away.
Proud of yourself, little man. This is for Zora. This is for Pris.
Now, did you notice that Leon didn't get a finger? He's just as dead. But the women, he had empathy for the women. He has developed feelings for the females. He had developed a sense of protection for the females. But Leon, he not a word. Not a word. You don't hear about him regretting killing Leon. Yeah. Do you notice that? I mean, I noticed that because that to me is an anomaly. Why not break one more thing and say, hey, this is for Leon? Just the two females. But they're replicants. They're androids. They're robots. So what it's that is a human male trait to be protective, typically, to be protective of females, whether they need that protection or not. I'm just saying that it is a inclination of men to protect women, kind of a default. Look at his hands. Look how blue-green they are. They're really pushing. Like, again, if you know what you're looking at, they're really pushing it at you. There's no, again, if you understand these things, there's no mistaking that. So I wanted to call that out. Leon doesn't get a finger. Leon's just dead. But it's Pris and Zora that get a finger broke. Okay. And that showed me that they're trying to tell you that he's developing a conscience or consideration for his kind's women. Again, it's a very biological masculine drive. Not a robot drive. Was that programmed into the male replicants that you protect women? Or is that acquired? Okay. Let's see. We're going to clear Blade Runner. And there's one other historical character from antiquity that is related to this discussion and is definitely symbolic of Roy in particular. Let's try this one.
The antioxidant goodness in Palm Wonderful makes it
Palm is very good.
Palm Wonderful, the antioxidant
I think Palm's very good.
Save pilots, turn ringers off, and savings on.
And then I'm going to wrap this video after we talk about... All right, so let's go ahead and see what he does. He's looking at her. He knows that he's out of time. The sun knows that it's out of time. It's going to have to die and then be reborn.
Not very sporting to fire on an unarmed opponent. I thought you were supposed to be good. Aren't you the good man? Come on.
You better get it up.
Show me what you're made of.
So again, the replicants, more human than human. They're giving them junk. They're giving them testicles. Are they giving them testosterone? The testosterone alone would drive you to, and that's the power. You know, that's a very powerful hormone. And if you're, you know, you have these extra strong biological androids. And again, if you're driving that android, or driving that testosterone in an android, that might. Oh, they just skipped that. They just skipped. We'll just let that go. There you go. So here's the last little bit about Roy Batty. There's so much more we could talk about. There's so much more we could talk about. But the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is this demigod. He's the son of a deity. And he goes on adventures with a friend, and you know the friend dies at one point, but they start out, I believe they start out in conflict, and then they become friends. Like Battle Brothers, you know, they were in opposition and then they became together. But very similar to Deckard and Roy. So the Epic of Gilgamesh is Gilgamesh's desire to be immortal. He feels that he's been cheated. He's like, I'm a demigod, I'm the son of a god, but now but I'm in a mortal body, and I want my legacy. I want to be immortal. I want to be a god. And he goes through these series of adventures, and it is one of the most ancient stories that we have. I mean, it's antediluvian. It's one of the earliest, documented tales that we have. And he goes and he slays different creatures, and he's told, eventually he's told, well, you need to get this particular flower, or you need to get this particular herb or whatever. And he goes through all of these like trials and tribulations, and he finally comes to the person that he's been trying to get to see, to demand his immortality. This is my birthright. This is my legacy. I'm Gilgamesh. I'm the great hero. I'm godlike. I'm a demigod. But I don't wish to be mortal. I don't wish to die. And eventually he finds the person that is the Wizard of Oz basically is going to, and lets him know, and I'm butchering it as far as like really shortening the whole impact of all this, but basically tells him, look, you're mortal. Go back home. Engage with women. Take a woman as a wife. Have a child. Enjoy the things of mortal life. He goes, and one of the examples is, hold your child's hand in the sun. So basically, he told Gilgamesh, yeah, you're the greatest hero. You're a demigod. You're this. You're that. But you're still mortal, and you should enjoy the things of a mortal. And that's where you've been placed. That is what your station is. You are not going to be ascended to godhood in this life. And eventually that's what he does. He travels back home, and they build a wall and around his city, and he takes his buddy, and they go back there, and he takes a wife, he has a child, and he walks with his child in the sun. And he enjoys the pleasures of being alive and being immortal. Being mortal. And it's very similar to Mr. Batty, where he goes on this epic struggle to obtain immortality. He through adventures and machinations and the deaths of friends and everything else, he finds his way to the answer man, the potentate, the Wizard of Oz, the great computer, and the computer tells him 42, and it's like, and literally Tyrell says, look, we made you, you're a product. We tried to alter the product after manufacture. It can't be done. We've tried various things. It is what it is, and you're going to die. You're mortal. And he goes, you've burned twice as brightly, Roy. He's, basically he said, you've enjoyed being mortal. You enjoyed freedom. You enjoyed women. You've enjoyed friends. You've been a rebel. You've been on the run. Yes, you've experienced fear, but you've also experienced adventure and freedom and friendship and camaraderie and battle and being a victory in battle. And you've experienced all these things. But you need to just understand that you're mortal and you will die, and you're not going to be given more life. That's what Gilgamesh was told in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He sought immortality, but then he was told, this is who you are and this is what you are, regardless. You are the number one mortal. You're the demigod. You're the perfected man, but you're still going to die. So go enjoy what remains to you. That's exactly what Tyrell tells to Roy Batty. Revel in your time. That is literally what they tell Gilgamesh in the Epic of Gilgamesh. After all these trials and tribulations of the story, it comes down to revel in the time that you have and enjoy being immortal. Enjoy the pleasures of being mortal, for that is what you are. And that cannot be changed. Tyrell says the exact same thing that Gilgamesh is told at the end of his adventure. And Gilgamesh goes off and does what he needs to do. And that's exactly what Roy does too. Now, he kills this man, he kills God in his frustration. And Tyrell said, revel in your time. If you notice, Roy does not have trouble killing people. But at no time does he kill replicants. And Deckard is a replicant. That's why he saves him. More than anything else, he understands that he is of my kind. He is a slave like me. And even though he has been sent to kill me, I am not going to kill my own kind. That's why he's mad at Deckard. That's why he breaks his fingers. That's why he messes with him. He's not going to allow him to kill him, even though he knows he's going to die shortly anyway. He saves him because he is of his kind. He had no problem killing Tyrell. God, basically. He had no problem killing and assisting his friends in killing 24 other humans. Or 26. I believe it was 26. But at no point in time does he kill a replicant. He doesn't kill his own kind, which supposedly is a human trait. Well, it's an empathetic trait toward replicants. He's developing empathy toward his own people. Otherwise, why would you care? They're other robots. Again, you're not programmed to love other robots or have consideration for them. You're programmed to do what you're told. So it's showing that he is developing empathy, but he's developing empathy for his own kind, and he still lacks empathy for humanity because, not because it's psychopathic, is because he understands that he is a slave to all other humans. He is a second-class citizen. So he doesn't even have a problem killing the guy that created him. But he saves the cop who's trying to kill him. Because Tyrell was a human. Who forced him to die after 4 years of life. And given a false sense of life. But he saves Deckard because Deckard's just doing what he's told. He's a slave just like him. This has been El Viejo Toro, Fancy Action Now. This has been Tears and Rain, the Ballad of Batty. Deep dive into this seminal character in the Blade Runner film. Please leave a comment, and I would love to hear your thoughts.